Thank you for joining this call. I'm just testing the live setup. I'm going to start in a couple minutes. All right, perfect. We are on time, so let's get started. Thank you for joining this live session. If you're online, my name is Amir. I'm a software developer or architect specialized in building mobile and web applications, but also been involved in managing infrastructure, and developing the type of Kubernetes type infrastructure as well, and also being involved in applying dev and SecOps practices as well across different organizations. So for today purposes, I'm hoping to basically just build what we call a RAG pipeline, a retrieval augmented generation. I'm hoping that you're already familiar with a little bit with the term, and if you're not, you can do some research. I will be including all the topics that we'll be talking about this in these sessions. Also, the code will be available in GitHub after this call. Let's get started. So basically, I have a problem, and I wanted to first focus on the problem statement. And really the focus of this session is not really to focus on the problem itself, because there can be many different use cases, and the use case that I will be presenting today, it's more of like a to-do type app, just to demonstrate some of the capabilities and some of the things that LlamaIndex frameworks and different frameworks that are available can do, and what does the future of the application developments in general and business logic, what we call it today, it's going to look like in future in business applications. So I will be building this workflow. So in today's session, I will be presenting building what I call it a AI newsletter, kind of kind of a news aggregator that can looks at the news, do some research for you, and kind of retrieve certain subjects based on what I provided as initial input, and then augment that, and then brings me back this information, whether I define it as a monthly, daily, whatever schedule I give it to. So in this case, let's start by that, and let me actually show you an example of what I mean and by that. And so looking at some of the output here, so if you look at this output, for example, this one says email AI daily newsletter, the future of DevOps. It has all this information, and all this information are basically generated by the AI and based on the initial input that I provided to the AI. I apologize for any sort of a delay across my screen, as I'm not sure if there is some sort of a latency, but I'm hoping that by the time that I speak about it, you already seen that on the screen as well. So the goal is to really receive such an automatic email, whether daily, monthly, however it is, like what you do in the magazines, and receive certain subjects summarized in that email. And then so you can kind of take this use case and then later on see how you can apply it in your organization, or how you can even apply it in different other type of use cases. So the really big problem statement is that we have a lot of unstructured data available from different websites, and then I have certain subjects that I simply don't have time to do research on it, and I want AI to go and do research and understand the language, where that's where the long language models are really good at, and then apply those functionalities. So really starting from the beginning, um, whether you are building a business workflow or AI workflow, you still need to kind of define it and bring it kind of like a workflow diagram. So let's start by doing that. And I'm going to say the first is going to be the user, which is going to be myself, applying that, providing that initial input basically. What I do is basically the user enters the subjects, enters the prompt, or what we call it prompt. And then what I want is basically I want the AI to first do certain analysis, because if I just take what I exactly provided and do some sort of like a Google search or some sort of research on that just word or just that term, it's going to be very limited to what I provided. So I want AI to kind of augment that. I want it to kind of break it down, understand what I'm talking about, and then provide more kind of like a prompts. So basically what we call it synthesizing prompts, or synthesizing more text. So that's what I want. So I want as the next step, or what I want agent to break down the subject, and then they just like extracts like keywords and like things like that as well, if it's possible, or even come up with sub topics if it's possible. And then my next step would be to for the agent to perform simple Google search, and then based on that, I wanted to also be able to kind of keep it in the memory. And so we need to really think about how is going to be our end results. Our end result is going to be email, so I want also the agent to email me the end result of whatever was generated. And then I missed one step, is that we want agent to actually generate the text initially. So it's really that simple workflow that I'm trying to kind of build initially, and we can kind of see how we can build and deploy that later. And we might not get to actual deployment of this application. We'll see based on the amount of time that's left. But if not, even we can do some brainstorming, and we can do some understanding of how it's going to look like. So this is really the basic deployment, basic workflow that we are talking about. Whether you can build it you can think about it as a user, coming to your website, buying something, do some browsing, adding it to the cart, processing the payment, so you can apply it to any sort of a business workflow. So this is just one simple example of how you can manipulate text, especially if your use case is really heavy around text. It would be really nice. In this case, my user would enter the prompt, the agent would break down the subject, the agent would take that, break down the subjects, then perform Google search or any some sort of a search, and then generate and synthesize a new text, a summary, and then email me the end result. And I want agent to be autonomous. I want it to be able to figure out all these steps by itself versus me programming those steps. So that's where really the difference is, whether in a traditional applications, in my opinion, the way that I would see it is that you would have that centerpiece, which is your business logic, and then you would have to apply those switch statements and build a lot of if and algorithms around how your business logic is going to look like. But versus Gen AI applications and using long language models and core of your logic, your business logic, here is going to be really what the LLM is going to be coming in place, and it's going to act as your center reasoning and centerpiece. And I'll be showing that how it's going to look like when I get to that portion. Alright, so let's save this, and so this is going to be our basic workflow that we're going to be working with. And so in terms of technologies, I might not get to building the UI today, but so the way that it's going to go, so let's move on from that workflow diagram, simple workflow diagram, without any sort of flow charts where there's no conditions right now. Everything is very simple. This is what I want, one by one. And then in the technological side, I would see the way that you would see it. You would probably gonna have some sort of UI where the user would enter the prompt. So the prompt, and then so that would be the UI piece. And then in that piece, you're always gonna have the LLM, the long language model. And then so in this case, you are using the GPT model by OpenAI, and this one is hosted on the one that I'll be showing today. It's hosted on Azure cloud as a private instance. So you have option whether to use the public ChatGPT API. That's one of your options, or you can use some sort of Azure platform to kind of deploy different models, in a private instance, and really control the networking, control all the aspects of security. If your concern is really around security of the data, that's where private platforms where you can deploy those models privately would really come into place. Of course, for this purpose, I could also use some sort of Llama or some sort of those frameworks where I could run those models locally as well. But in this case, I just wanted to see how I can deploy it on Azure cloud and leverage some of the Azure services as well. And also in terms of a model, bring your own model, you can also switch that piece to any sort of other model. When you have that platform like Azure, you can switch that to Claude, or you can switch it to any some sort of other Gemini or any other model that you would think that would be very powerful to work with. And then so that's where my ChatGPT API would come in place. So let me just specify that, because at the end of the day, it's just another API that we are calling. I also have the Google search, and I also have the Google Gmail API. Right? And then so in this process, what I didn't mention that so the first step would be to actually whenever the user enters the prompts, we need some sort of a breakdown of the prompt, the initial prompt. So that would be the responsibility of what we're going to use today as LlamaIndex. So the LlamaIndex is going to be our orchestration framework, where our data processing framework as well. And we're also going to use some of the agent parts that the LlamaIndex provides to build that agent as well. So in this case, we also want to use LlamaIndex, and I'll explain what's the benefits of the LlamaIndex comes into place. So LlamaIndexing for us in this case is going to really work as an orchestrator, where it's going to be a connector with the ChatGPT, even the Google search and the Gmail and every other parts. It's going to be our orchestrator. We want to abstract that part so that I can switch different models with that section, and that's where I want to be able to have that flexibility on LlamaIndex. And LlamaIndex also provides a lot of integration already, and I'll show it to you in a second. Alright, just to track the time, we're at the 12 minutes. Alright, so let's build this. Alright, so this is going to be our data processing layer. Alright. And in terms of short-term, long-term memory, for the agent to remember when it's passing different information from one step to another step, different processes. We need some sort of memory in place. We either have a short-term memory where you can pass the context between different steps, and that would take up a lot of tokens, and that would basically consume a lot of tokens where you have a limited amount of token that you can consume, versus you can actually use some sort of a kind of a long-term but still short-term kind of memory in some sort of a local database. In this case, I will be using Faisse, which is kind of a meta local vector database. If I spelled it correctly, it's a vector database as well. Yeah. Alright, so in this case, our AI LlamaIndex, or our AI better application. Okay, this one is going to take the user prompt. It's probably going to be service, and I'm going to build this first as a monolith. I would like to first build this as a monolith service, so it's going to be one single service, and then we'll see how we can break it down into different microservices. And there is a reason I'm not going to start by building it as microservices, because there's different options, and then you need some sort of flexibility, whether you want to scale it, those different tools or different things that we're going to talk about when I get to the actual coding. All right. So this AI newsletter basically is going to do orchestrate that, and is going to use, first is going to get my contact, analyze it, right? So it's going to analyze it. So this is the analyze step. Okay. And in this case, it's going to use the ChatGPT to basically, once it does the analysis, it's going to come up with different topics in this case. So let's say these topics, and it's going to do a Google search on those topics. So get the topics, search topics. Okay. And then once the topics are coming back, I would take those and I would store them in a database, because what I don't want at this point, there's going to be a lot of information, a lot of websites that I searched and extracted information from. I don't want to pass all those data from all those websites that I searched into the next step, because then I'm going to be consuming all this data, and most of them are going to be useless, or we need some sort of cleaning on those data and extracting the very meaningful and useful part of the data. So there's no point in doing that, and I'm not going to actually today show the step, but the step that we're going to build, it's going to have the possibility where you can add those data manipulations part into that section. So for that reason, that I don't want to pass and consume a lot of token, I'm going to store it to a Faisse vector database at this point. And then once this is stored, in that case, we would need the Llama ChatGPT model actually in two cases. One of them we need it for retrieval, and one of them we need it for embedding models. So we actually need two models in this case. One of them for embedding, and one of them for just a chat part. Okay, so let's talk about the actual two models, different models that we deploy. In this case, the LlamaIndex is going to use to take the contents that I took from the Google search and use embedding, and then embeds them and stores them in the, basically it's going to go back to the AI. So at this point, then once this is completed, this process is completed, there's going to be an arrow going from LlamaIndex again to store this into the database. Okay. So the really step is search the topics from the Google search, takes the contents, so embed the content, and then return embeddings, then store them. So there's a lot of sub-processes to this process as well that we need to think about it. So really the storage part didn't mention, right? So I'll fix that diagram in a bit. Alright, so that would be the first process where then you would get stored. So at this point is stored. And then as the next step, I want the LlamaIndex. Again, there's going to be a lot of arrows, so I'm going to try to not make it confusing and then kind of number the steps. But at this point, the LlamaIndex is going to use the ChatGPT to generate a new kind of retrieve the information and then augment them. So that's where the RAG comes in. So in this case, it would retrieve the information from the database. Based on the initial input that I prompted. So it's going to take, it's going to retrieve it, it's going to come back. So this is going to be actually a two-headed arrow. Right, so you get the point. In this point, it would have to generate, so another arrow coming in, and in this case, it would require to generate a new thing. And then once that is generated, just send it to the Google API. And then Google API would send it back to users' email. Okay. So the arrow wouldn't actually come from here, so it would actually go back again to LlamaIndex. That's why it's going to get really confusing, because LlamaIndex is going to be really our orchestrator. So I really need to make that box a little bit bigger in terms of diagram. Okay. Alright, so let's make sense of this diagram that I built. I'm going to clean it up and I'm going to publish this at the same time as part of this content. But yeah, really the point is to really have the first user, our actor, that's going to enter the prompt. And this once this prompt is provided, then we are going to have this AI user as our orchestrator, which is going to be our main box. So I'm going to be making it a little bit bigger. So let's fix this. And then in this case, first thing it's going to do is going to search the topic. So AI, the LlamaIndex has been requested to do the Google search. And then so all of these are reasoning all decided by the GPT model that's up here. So we're going to actually use the same GPT model to first understand the intent of the user. So the first really step is really actually understanding the user's intent, what the user is really trying to do. Okay. Alright, so without getting too much in building diagrams, just clean this up. This is really going to search the topics, embed the context. So that's where we are using the embedding model. And then there's also an arrow going to the Gmail API in the centerpiece as well. Alright. Yeah, and that's our arrow going from ChatGPT coming back with the embedding, so that the embedding can be stored in our database again. So that's where our arrows go back again to store it. Okay. Alright, so enough of doing diagrams, and so let's actually get into the coding part. I'm gonna add this store in the middle of here. So let's start by opening a new VS Code window. Here we go. Alright. Alright, cool. So the first step for us is to really start building our. So first I have the initial folder. So let me build up that folder called the AI newsletter. So in that folder, at first I'm going to start by a simple Python file called agent.py. Of course, I'm going to have my requirements txt file. Right, so those are the initial kind of the work that I'm doing. I don't know why my agent file disappeared. Alright, so we have this as well. Alright, so I'm using some sort of a Python virtual environment manager in extension in VS Code that helps me a lot. I'm going to be using the latest version of the kind of Python of the latest version 2.12.7 in this case, and I'm going to use all the latest version of the LlamaIndex and everything else that's currently available to download. So in this case, let me just create a new virtual environment. I'm going to use the 3.12.7 version. And I'm going to use these requirement files that we're going to be filling in a bit in this case. So there are a couple of options. I'm just going to ignore them for now. And you can see there's going to be the Python environment is being created for now, and I can look at the logs. And let me just open that in the terminal. And I also want, as part of this AI newsletter, I also wanted to add a .environment file as well. Okay. That's where I will be adding all my API keys and everything else. Okay, so in this case I have this. Let me just navigate to the AI newsletter folder. Alright. Okay. So I have all the basics and I have the Python version. I believe, let me just close that and reopen the environment. Alright, so now I'm sure that 100% of the environment is activated and my Python version is correct. Yes, 3.2.7. Alright, perfect. So in this case, the couple of things that I need to first import. Obviously, I need to import LlamaIndex. So I will be installing the LlamaIndex core and LlamaIndex in general. So one of the packages that for sure I'll be installing will be the LlamaIndex. So I'll be adding the LlamaIndex here. And so all these flows, or all these, if you go back to this diagram, basically all these little circles, they're going to be tools in my workflow in LlamaIndex language. So I also need to import a couple of things that would allow me to, if I go back to my screen here, I also need to import what we call tools in LlamaIndex language. Okay. I am also going to use the Azure APIs, OpenAI API. So in this case, I'm also importing the OpenAI. And I'm also using other packages like Pydanic and things like that in some cases as well. Okay. There are also other packages that I'll be using from LlamaIndex. In this case, it's also going to be the chat engine, and I'm also going to be using the LLM's chat message because I'm going to be formatting the messages. So I need some sort of a structure for that message. So I'll be implementing it as well. And then some other simple packages like Google search and things like that I'll be applying later as well. But for the purpose of this right now, I'm just gonna apply those, and we'll start by that. Okay. And then I also want to import my dot environment file. So for sure I'm going to need my OS to import my OS. And I'm using sort of that I would like to use some sort of that environment package as well in this case as well. Okay. And of course I want to be able to load my dot environment file first things that I want to do. So I'll be loading the Alright, so that's the first thing I'm going to do. So I also, as part of that, once I define my that environment file, the first thing I want to define first my API keys. So I have my API key for Azure. So let me actually take that in a bit and start that a bit later. So the first thing that I want to define actually is what we call the tools. So I want to define all the tools here, right? So that's where I'm going to define. I'm going to tell, hey AI model, you have all these tools available. What can you do with it? So I'm going to define all the tools, all the functions in here, and I'm going to structure it with different parts. And then that's where I would just like create the agent, and then run tasks. Okay. So basically that's how the code is gonna kind of like I think it's gonna structure first. Alright, so let's start by first building the first workflow. In this case, I'm going to simply define a function called analyze text. Okay, so this is going to be basically my first ever tool. In this case, I'm going to have an input called, let's just for it called text. This is going to be my first input that I'm going to be entering that the LLM is going to be analyzing. And so for that reason, I would like to also provide you the description where LLM is also going to be able to use that description to define what is it. So in this case, I want to say this is the input text. Okay, so and I want it to be return a string for now. It could be an array, it could be a model, or it could be anything else. And I can actually define a structured data. So the way that I would do it, I would just first define a class, and let's call it the topic class, where I'm going to use the base model that I imported earlier. Okay. And I want all these topics to be a list. Okay, so this is how I'm telling it to be a structure model. It's not defined. Let me see if I did import my. Yeah, so I did not import it, so let me import it. So I don't want it to be a string, I want it to actually be a topic, which is a list in this case. Alright, so that's fixed. So let's start what's in that function. Alright. Alright, so in this case, this is gonna be my first. So let's say in this case, we are returning, let's say, an object, or just the topic object class that we just defined earlier. And so why this is complaining? Okay, so this needs to parentheses here. So I did a mistake here, this doesn't go. So let's say for now we just return just okay. So that's going to be one of my tools. The second tool obviously is going to be my search text function. Alright, let's just keep everything as it is for now, and then this one will not technically return anything, or we can decide later if it needs. And then obviously I also want to, once I search the data, I want to be able to store it. So this is going to be my next flow in the conversation. And then once I stored it, I want it to be able to generate a new text. So all this workflows is going to be just a simple Python function, and I'm going to build that, and I'm just going to show you how it's going to work with the LlamaIndex tools section. Alright, so let's just put some of those for now, and then we can come back and add the email part and different sections in a couple of minutes. Okay, so let's start by analyzing, building the analyze function here. So here, that's where I define all my functions. So I need to actually specify all the tools. That's where I want to call it the analyze tool. So I'm going to use the functional tool of ability of the LlamaIndex, and I'm going to use it from defaults. And for that reason, I'm going to use the analyze text function that I built earlier as my tool. Okay. So this is the first tool that I'm going to add, but I'm potentially going to need to do the same thing for search text and store text and generate text and all those things, just to build like a tool set, like a toolbox. So we can call it here the, let's call it all here the functions or methods. Then that's where we call it the toolbox. Okay, that's where all your tools is actually going to be, where basically you're going to tell the AI, these are all the tools you have available, what can you do, or you can actually provide the steps to say, okay, based on the tools you have available, apply that step, or that step, depending on how it works with you. Okay. Alright, so first thing, I built the first tool. So let's now build the actual agent. So that's where I want to define the agent. So I'm going to be using the agent, and I'm going to be using the React agent method. Some people might say this is a slow method. You can use different engines or different ways of building agents. For that purpose, right now I'm just using the React engine for them from the LlamaIndex to build this. Okay. And in this case, I want to be able to define the list of the tools that I have available. So in this case, I'm going to just for now define the analyze tool. I'm sorry, I misspelled the tool here. Okay. So I'm going to include this tool. Okay, and I'm going to expand it as it goes. And so this function always going to take the LLM model that I have not actually defined, which I'm going to define. And for this purpose, I'm going to put the variables as truths because I want to see what exactly the chatbot is trying to communicate with, and I'm going to put the max iteration as, let's say for now, 10. The max iteration basically says, okay, how many times the AI can go and be stuck in a situation and try before it fails, before it tells you that it's not able to do it. Alright, so we defined the LLM, but we didn't actually build the object itself. So in this case, I'm going to define the, I made a mistake here. Alright, so let me see what's the best place to define this. So this is where all my default variables is going to be. So I'm going to define the LLM variable. In this case, I'm going to use the LlamaIndex ability to integrate with Azure. So in this case, I'm going to use the Azure OpenAI. I'm going to use their model. In this case, I'm going to need a lot of tokens, so I chose one of their models called GPT-4 32K, which I would say that it would support larger, maybe, token set. And in this case, I have not created that, so I'll show you that step of how to create that via the Azure in a second. And of course, this takes over the OpenAI key and Azure endpoint, I believe. And of course, the API version. Okay. So this is going to be the LLM model that I'm going to use for that purpose. So let's go to actually the Azure and we can see how I can create and deploy a new model with Azure. So if you do not have the Azure currently an account, I recommend building it. I think you can get some free credits, and for that demo I did not even spend a lot of money, at least on the deployments of the models. I'm using all the free tier part to build this demo, so you can really get a lot of things with Azure and kind of experiment with it. So yeah, let me actually show you let me share my screen and show you what I'm talking about here. So on my Azure account, of course, if I go to Azure OpenAI Studio, I'm going to have here. I already created this studio model, so you're gonna have access to that. And you have a lot of things that you can do, so things like fine-tuning, things that will not include in this thing, so things that, you can even build a whole RAG pipelines just using the Azure itself, but for that purpose, because you're building a custom solution, I want to use some sort of in-memory vector, I'm using a different type of solution for that. Alright, so if I go, I believe there should be a section called deployments, so if I go to the deployments, so let's go to the deployments. Alright, so you can see I already deployed a embedding model, but so we can start deploying another base model, foundation model. In this case, I wanted to use the GPT-4K, 35K, 34, I believe. Let's see. And yeah, for sure you have a lot of options. So here is the one I wanted to use. That's capable of doing a chat compilation. Okay. So I'm going to confirm. And again, see this is where you can actually get into a lot of details of it. So you can have a standard model, but you can, if you're really concerned about security, you really can go provision, manage, and really customize that based on the those requirements. So by clicking on that, it simply is going to create the model and it's going to deploy that. And I can see that the resource report location is going to be the France Central. So it might take some time to create this resource. So let's just continue building the applications while this model is being deployed. And of course, something that with the LlamaIndex is that we can define the settings. So we can actually say that I want these things to be the settings. And that's where I want to define the settings. So throughout my whole agent, this setting is already, this element is already set. Okay. So let's go back to the Azure screen and see if this is deployed now. Yeah, so I can see the deployment is completed. So let's complete it. So our deployment name is same thing. Here is our API key. In this case, I am going to put the call Azure. Okay, and I'm going to use the OS. So alright. And in this case I did not define it, so let me go here and define a couple of variables. So that's why the token comes in. Okay. Checking the syntax issue. So where I need the variable here, and obviously the endpoint I'm just going to hardcode it for now, for the sake of time. And then for the version, I believe the version here is let's say this should be the API version. Alright, so in
In
this
this
first
first
case,
case,
I define my input, I
input,
define my
define my
LLM.
LLM.
Alright,
Right,
so
so
let's
let's
just
just
first.
first.
So
So
in
in
a
a
really
really
simple
simple
term, what
term,
I
what I
want
want
is
is
the
the
LLM to
LLM to
return me
return me
the
the
chat
chat
message.
message.
Okay. Okay. So I
So I
wanted to
wanted to
really
really
send
send
the
the
chat
chat
message,
message,
but I
but I
wanted
wanted
to
to
have the
have the
input.
input.
So
So
what I
what I
really
really
need
need
to
to
put
put
in, I
in, I
can
can
either
either
put the
put the
text as
text
an
as an
input,
input,
um, or
or
I
I
can
can
use the
use the
message
message
object to
object to
format
format
the
the
data in
data
the
in the
message
message
object
object
first
first
before
before
doing
doing
that. So
that.
I'm
So I'm
just going
just
to
going to
create
create
a
a
messages
messages
list,
list,
so
so
where
where
I would
I would
use the
use the
tab
tab
message
message
object that I
object that I
imported
imported
earlier.
earlier.
Um, and then
And
in
then in
that
that
object
object,
there's
there's
always
always
a
a
role.
role.
In
In
this
this
case I
case, I
want to
want to
provide a
provide a
system
system
prompt,
prompt.
so I'm
So I'm
going to
going
use
to
the
use the
system.
system.
I'm going
I'm
to
going to
actually
actually
provide a
provide a
content,
content,
and
and
this is
this
to
is to
generate
generate,
uh, you
you
know
know,
10
10
topics,
topics.
and I
And I
want to
want to
say
say
as
as
JSON
JSON
object
object
only.
only.
Okay. And
And
then I
then I
want to
want to
add the
add the
second
second
message.
message.
That's
That's
where the
where the
user
user
message that
message
would
that would
actually
actually
come
come
from.
from.
In
In
this
this
case,
case,
the
the
role
role
would
would
be
be
a
a
user,
user,
and the
and the
content
content
would
would
be
be
the
the
text,
text,
which is
which
our
is our
input.
input.
So
So
now
now
that I
that I
have the
have the
messages
messages
list,
list,
I want
I
to
want to
pass
pass
this,
this,
and
and
I
that
want to
will
get
get
the
the
output
output
back.
back.
Okay, so
Okay, so
this is
this is
going to
going to
be
be
our
our
first
first
tool.
tool.
So let's just format this. So I defined my agent and I said I want to use this analyze tool, but I never said actually what I want to put as the initial input. So I'm going to just say agent chat. Okay. And since this is going to be a multi-line prompt, I'm going to use Python triple double quotes to enter that. So in this case, I want to say just say analyze following topic, and the topic, let's say we want to talk about event-driven architecture. So I want the robot to do I want the AI to do the research on the event-driven architecture, while I wanted to first analyze it. And then by analyzing it, I first provided it with the first system prompt, telling it to generate 10 topics as JSON object only. Okay. So this is where it's really powerful. I really don't need to break down and process the unstructured data. I just tell the AI to, hey, understand the topic and generate me 10 topics as JSON object only. That object that's going to be generated, it's going to be my topic class, which I provided earlier here, so we can kind of guarantee a structure of the output of that function. Okay. All right, so let's continue on that. So first thing I said, so just analyze the following topic, and the topic is event driven, so I want the robot, so basically what I'm expecting from the output is to give me some 10 topics that I set as a JSON object. So let's run this. Of course, I need to build my requirements file. So a lot of things that I'm going to build here, so I'm going to for sure have the LlamaIndex. I'm going to have the dynamic, if I pronounce it correctly. Here we go. I'm sorry, I defined it twice. Then I also want the Google search. And I want that environment as well. So let's do a pip install dash r requirements. Oh, I'm actually not in the correct folder. I actually don't remember what was the Google search package here, so let me actually do a Google search on that. Okay, so the package doesn't call actually Google search, it actually calls Google search dash Python. Apologize for that. So I'm not sure this also calls that. Yep. Something here. And so all the LlamaIndex, those are also different packages that needs to be installed. So let me include those as well. And I'm not specifying any version, I just want to take the latest version that's available. Okay. Alright, so this is going to take a little bit of time to install all the packages. So what has been written, so let's just continue on that. Alright, so just note that again you can use different engines. I'm currently using the React, but you can use different type of frameworks to use that as well. Okay. And then so the next step that I'm going to build, and once this is loaded, I'll present that. But the next one I want to build is also the search. So in this case, I want to get the again the input that's generated as a topic. So I want to basically search each topic. So I want the LLM to be able to loop on that. So I'll just say search text, and I want to use the Google search. That's where the search package that I want it to be is here. So I want to create the response. So response, then search. I want to search the text. I want the number of the inputs to start to be at least 1, and I want it to stop at 1 for now. Meaning that whenever it comes back, it's only going to come back with 1 link. Okay. And that's for now, just return the response. So far I built 2 functions. One to analyze the text, one to search the text, and the next one is going to be store the text. So in that case, whatever I'm searching, I'm going to embed it and I'm going to store it. So for sure, this is going to be store So perhaps I would have to loop for I in response. I want to store text. Something like that. Okay. So this is going to take some time. So let's see if this is going to be completed. Of course, it's taking a lot of packages, so it's going to take some time for sure. Just want to make sure it's not stuck. So my packages are already installed. Perfect. So whenever it gets to the started, I have to also do the embedding. So let me, in the meantime, I can also define salary, but only for the embedding ones. Actually, it's going to embed. And then for this case, I wanted to use the different model. So let me go back to the Azure and look at my deployments. I already deployed another models, but I don't have to do that. But similar process goes to deploy foundation model. So in this case, I'm going to be deploying another race model. And this model is going to be used for embedding. So I'm going to use the ADA0021. Alright, so now we got this as well. So the deployment name is going to be that. So deployment name. In this case, I'm going to have different scenarios were defined here. Now I also want to use actually we can spell errors. Yep, so in this case this is going to be the new API key for the second model. So we need one model to basically retrieve the chats and be responsible for generation, and then another one will be responsible for embedding and storing them in the vector database. And then for the version, I'm actually going to use a different version. So in this case, I want to use, let's just hardcode the version. Alright, so I have my embed model as well. Okay, let's just hope this gets installed fast. Alright, so this looks completed. Alright, perfect. So right now I only defined to use one tool, so let's just test it out. So I defined input here, so I can say now Python let's see. So computer is a little bit slow. Okay, so it's saying step input, analyzing the following topic, event-driven architecture. So we realized that you can use the analyze text function, so it did that by itself, by just understanding the intent of my input. So that's where it gets exciting. And it was able to extract the input and understand that my intent is to understand the event-driven architecture, and it actually came up with 10 topics and subtopics for that. So that was the first step, and I think it did it nicely and completed it. So based on event-driven architecture, it came up with 10 different topics. So that's really nice. So it did the first step, which is the analyzing it. And then so my next step is to tell it to basically search it. So now I want to be able to search that. Okay. So now let's just do a search and just return the search result for now. So let's break it down, and that's what That's what I believe they call prompt engineering. So I want to be more specific. So I want to say, I want to start by saying run the, oh, apology. Run following tasks on topic of event-driven architecture. Okay. I want to say first step, analyze the text, the input text. I wanted second to search each topic. To realize I did not loop, or I did not create any source or loop to search on the topics. I simply created a tool to be able to do the search. And I created a function to analyze the text first to get the topics. That's it. I did not create any loop or any logic between analyzing the text and the search text. And I simply defined a pseudocode to say analyze it and then search the input. So based on that, then it should probably provide me with the Google links, and I'm going to just print it out just to look at the result of the Google search. So really, it's really like the difference is really by providing a toolbox and then say what's the best way and just figure out what's the best way to get to that, to reach that level. So again, understands it. First, it needs to analyze it. So actually understood that it needs to analyze it, saying I need to use the analyze text tool to help me answer the question. Came up with the topics. However, I think there was an error and message problem, so let's take a look at the problem. Yeah, so it's an actually interesting error message. So it's saying the user also asked to search each topic. However, I don't have a tool available to search that operation. So it's interesting because it was able to actually understand what I'm trying to do, but it doesn't have the tool in its toolbox to be able to do it. And why is that the case is because on the line 88, I only defined analyze tools. So I did not define any other tools. And one of the main reasons that why it's not able to do it, so it's because I need to add that extra tool that I'm building to analyze as well. So I need to define a second tool. In this case, I call it the search tool. And I want to use the search function that I built. So now I'm going to add this search tool to the list of available toolbox. My apologies for that. Alright, so now if I rerun the code, it should be able to now do it because now it has the tool available in its list. So I might have installed the wrong Google package. Let me take a look at that. So yeah, it got into an error because it was not able to do it, and it did a couple of iterations and it failed. And that was because the tool actually gave you an error message. So I'm just trying to figure out if I installed the correct Google search package, and if not, so what's the correct one? I think there's one. I think there's confusing. There's also the Python Google search package. Yeah. Alright, so let's just install this one instead. I'm gonna use a different one. If I'm not mistaken, the actual thing should be the number of results. Okay, there are different frameworks available. I believe you can even use the LlamaIndex for that. I believe there's even integration built in the LlamaIndex. For purpose of this, I just wanted to use some sort of a rapid framework that provides me with certain links. So let me rerun this again and see if this time works. Okay, let's take a look. Right, so in the meantime, while this is running, so I'll just be able to, I think this is really the problem with the package I'm using here. Right, let's build the other different part. And just so for the interesting part is that it actually went through the list. So it's actually trying to look through the list. So if you look at it, first one starts by basics of event driven architecture. So you actually started running the first one. So you actually started by saying that I want to search the first one, which was this one. There you go. So you can only import search from Google search. I'm not sure why. Oh, I made a mistake. So I'm going to uninstall this. Let's see if the conflict is resolved. Try to see why the module is not found. Okay, that's good. Okay, I think it's working now. Let's see. So what this is loading, so the second one is going to search each topic, and then what I wanted to do is that once it searches each topic, I want to basically go over this URL and scrape the URL and then store the index it and then store it in the vector database. So in this step, I'm going to be building that part. So I'm going to have as this is running, so I have a search function. So in this store text function, I'm going to take the text, which is going to be the link of the websites. So what happened here? So I think it's not num, but it's number of results. Let's try this. So I'm going to rerun the code and I'm going to start building that section. So that's where the actual Faisse database is going to come in place. So the first thing I want to do, I want to for sure import the Faisse. I want to import the simply reader, web page reader of the LlamaIndex. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to import the LlamaIndex page reader. Okay, so this will be for reading the pages, for being able to script them. And then I'm also going to be using the OpenAPI embedding, because that's where I'm going to be embedding them. So I'm going to use also the OpenAPI embedding functionality. And then also I'm going to be using the Faisse databases as well, and its utilities. So anything related to Faisse database, I'm also going to be using that, and I'm also going to be using the LlamaIndex Faisse for its data integration part. That's interesting. Okay, so I'm running into small problems with this search function. So let's just try that out without it and see how it goes. And of course I want to be able to use the functionality, storage functionality of the LlamaIndex. Alright, so there are a couple of things that we need to, of course, install. I'll take this, make sure I add it to the list. Here, do hit install. So in my store text function, I want to definitely define a couple of things. First thing I want to do, I want to first define the dimension. Okay, I'm just going to set a default dimension, and I want to define the Faisse index. Okay. And of course, as my vector document or whatever I'm going to store, I need to read it. So I need to use this simple web page reader. Okay. And I want to know that this is HTML, and I want to convert it to text, and I want it to be true. And so load the data, and then the place where we would load the data would be the actual text, or it would be the link. Let's call it the link, so that it's easier to understand. So this is going to be the link. And then so once I have that, I want to create initialize my vector store. So that's where I would define my vector store. And that's where the Faisse vector store would come from. I would initialize that. I would initialize the index first, and I would use the index that I created. Okay. So I just defined that, but I need to define my storage context next. Okay, so that's where I would use the storage context, and then from default I will use the vector store that I just created. In this case, I want to index the document, so I'm going to use the embedding functionality of LLM here. So behind the scene, this is using the embedding model that I defined in the settings, and I set in the settings. And I actually don't think I did it, so I need to do that. once I finish this here. And then so once I have that, I want to save it actually, so I need to say index storage context that persist. I need to do that. And then so yeah, you mentioned, okay, how does it use the embed model? I need to actually define that here in the settings. Okay, so in the settings I need to say set the embed model to the embed model. Okay, so that's where I'm actually defining it to use it. Okay. Oops. I'm not going to do that. It's probably going to be a couple more missing, which I'm going to add to this list as I'm doing this. Yeah. So for Faisse, we're actually going to use a different package called Faisse CPU because I'm on the CPU. So there's different architecture, CPU architecture that can run it onto, but I think I need to use this one. So I'm going to install that for this purpose. Let's run it again. Probably needs more packages. So add that also. I'm not quite sure what's the name of the package. I think the name of the package can be different. Let me take a look. I remember running into this problem. Okay, so I just want to make sure what version of the so 3.7 is a good version. So why it's not able to do it? So I'm probably gonna need to install this. I'm gonna need to add this. So it's probably gonna solve the problem. So that's why they really call it autonomous, because it's capable of deciding and reasoning on its own by just available tools. And that's where really the powerful and the difference is going to come from traditional applications. So while this is running, and then for this purpose, I'm not going to return anything on the storage side. So I'm simply going to say this is not going to return anything. So there was an issue on the embed model. The line for a set. Yes, because here I made a mistake and I'm using the Azure OpenAI versus I'm gonna have to use the Azure OpenAI embedding. That's why it's the problem. And in this case, it's not going to run, it is only going to print it out. So I need to actually store the text. And I need to provide the link. So that's good. So it actually came back with the results. And it's actually searching, so it's Google searching each result now, each topic, and it's coming up with the different links that I can scrape. So in this case, if I run the store, yeah, and you reach out by max iteration, which in this case is I think 10 that I set. Okay. And that's normal because you reached out the iteration limit, which makes sense. Okay, but if you do not define a limit, it's just gonna keep going until it sometimes you might get stuck in a loop. So you want to make sure you definitely define some sort of exit exit out of this loop for some reason. Alright, so in this case I did store it as a search and I want to store it as a context. So I did persist it. And if I look, I should probably going to have a storage folder on the emailing side. So let's define that. Yeah. Okay. So now that I call the store functions, let's rerun it again and see that it's able to create a storage folder here, and we will be able to see the embeddings as it goes. So while this is loading, I'm going to create my third tool, which is the generate text. So I wanted to be able to once analyze it. Now that I start to search on each topic, I want to then, once it generated all the information and it stores them in its own knowledge base, then I want to be able to search on it and look for the information and generate a new text on top of that. So in this case, what I would do, I would build my generate text. In my generate text, I would simply get the first input text and then augment that. So the way that I want to do it, I want to first use the query engine to see. So yeah, it did search everything, and I believe it did store, let's see, it's using this will return a generate after, which means yeah, I'm trying to understand. So yeah, let's just call it the text because I think that's where the problem is. It's not able to understand the input. It's not from default, it's from documents. I apologize. Yeah, so the issue was really that around the input, it was not able to recognize the input. So because the LLM does a lot of the input extractions from the actual intent of the user, so we need to be careful about how you name your variable and all that stuff, because if you do name it, for example, in my case, link, it was not able to recognize it. So let's say now it is able to recognize it if it's able to continue the search and then the storage part. So every time it does the search, it's possible that I consume all my embedding model. So I'm going to have to deploy a new model in order to fix that. If it gave me the error, I'm just going to redeploy a new model, specifically embedding model. If I go back to my Azure dashboard, I should see that one should be okay. Everything looks okay on this. For sure this is different. Let's see. made a mistake there. Okay, so that's what. I was using a different endpoint, which was not the correct endpoint. It's funny because sometimes you're not sure which one is going to come from. Sometimes it comes up with a subtopic, sometimes it doesn't. Because we did not define really out of that topic list. I think we just defined we want to list a topic. And this is it. Yeah. And I think there is a problem. Must be a different API key. It's like the same exact API. I think there's a problem with the connection with the embedding model. So the API key is correct. The version should be correct. Let's get the endpoint again. No, let's do another thing. We could deploy another embedding model. So we define it. Just gonna review the code here on the head one. It's in the store text, so text. This. Deploy a new model. I'm just going to deploy a new model. So it's really the same thing. And for sure the API key should be changed. Maybe not. Let's see if this makes any difference. So since we already took 2 hours, we might take a break, or we might do a part 2 session. But I think first thing that I wanted to display is the ability to differentiate between the traditional logic versus the new logic. Versus the new logic, we're not really defining a business logic, we're really defining a kind of like a pseudocode, and you provide it to the machine is going to be able to reason on which tool to pick to use that. One of the demonstration was that I said search each topic. I did not look through or did not do anything like that. So let's see if it's going to be able to do it now, if it's able to connect to the model or embed the model. It's still collecting the links. Yeah, so it was able to do the storage, and as you can see there's a storage now, and then in the doc store, yeah, those are all the embeddings from all the websites that was generated. So this will be running as some sort of a batch job, because there's a lot of links, and then in order to scrape all these links, it might take a lot of time. So actually, for the purpose of this, I'm going to try to reduce the number of search result that comes back from the search. So maybe let's limit that to 1. This is what previously has worked for me. So the more information you can collect, the more the AI is going to be able to generate content. Versus if you do not provide it with enough information, it will not be able to generate as much as information as possible. So you want to provide as much as context as possible initially. So that's why we're scraping those web pages would help us to get a lot of information and build a local knowledge base. And that local knowledge base is stored in the vector database, the Faisse vector database. That's the local one, where I can see all the embeddings in here. And every time I want to rerun the solution, I just need to reset the database. I will just delete the folder and let it recreate again. So I think there is a problem here. Yeah. So with that, I think I will end this the live stream for now, and then I will do another two part sessions on continuous of the building the once the text is embedded now that we built our knowledge base, how we can retrieve the information from the knowledge base and then send the email and then format it and send the email to the user. So I will provide a part 2 of this session, I'll promise you, and then on top of that I would like to also provide you with the deployments. So maybe we can also go over the Kubernetes deployments of this solution, or as well with the DigitalOcean. So thank you very much for joining this live sessions. I know we did not achieve all the objectives that we defined at the beginning of the call, but hopefully we can do it in the part 2 sessions, and hopefully you gain some information about how this tool can help you and what is the difference between the traditional application development versus uh, the new type of development. So I really appreciate you joining the call. Thank you very much, and we'll pick this up on the next session. Thank you.